Dharma talk title this morning is It's Ordinary. It is ordinary. We all have an idea what that particular idea is, something being common, commonplace, ordinary. It's ordinary in this context is pointing to the nature of the mind. It's ordinary. And when it belongs to someone, it's not so ordinary. Then it's that special person that we are, that wonderful, accomplished person, so intelligent, and so perceptive of what everyone is doing. Or else the other one, I'm a loser. I can't get anywhere. I'm no good. I need more training. What are you writing?
I'm wonderful, or I'm a loser.
It's a good note taker. Wonderful loser. So what's this is something this teaching, it's ordinary, is shows up in the Buddhist teachings, probably in other teachings also, but in different lineages. The way this is, I think Suzuki Roshi in his book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, says it something like, before awakening or enlightenment, I'm not sure what his word for that is, it's something very special. But then after, I think he uses the word, it's ordinary. And there's a teaching in that is in my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, where he uses the Tibetan words, Tamogeshepa. Tamogeshepa means ordinary mind. And it's considered an advanced teaching. I'm not sure why I put it in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, because that's such a basically primary advanced book. In other words, he's like teaching out of both sides of his mouth through the whole book. That's why it's such an amazing book, because he's speaking of very ordinary, commonplace, that anyone can understand. And yet, the more you read it, then it tends to draw you down into a deeper understanding of the nature of mind. So, Tamogeshepa, ordinary mind. And then in the Dzogchen tradition, Dzogpa Chenpo, or the Great Perfection, that is referred to as Rigpa. And you could say it this way: we have flashes of that. We have flashes not of ordinary mind, which is ordinary. It happens all the time. Of course, mind is ordinary. But we have flashes of the fundamental nature of everything, that perception is without a comment. So it's just ordinary. Even saying it's ordinary is extra and too much. Sometimes this shows up for those of you who read poetry, like that kind of thing. Sometimes it shows up some very, very simple expressions and words are very ordinary and yet completely profound. You read the poetry of William Carlos Williams, early part of the last century. Very short poems, but very ordinary things that you could say, elevated into almost a magical realm. The words are so powerful. Not just the words themselves, but their juxtaposition and their placement. So ordinary is not a comment you would necessarily make on what's happening to you. You wouldn't necessarily say, well, this is just ordinary. You might. The ordinariness might come in flashes. There might be something that you can't think of another word other than that something is completely unique and yet is ordinary. This is why it's so difficult, because the self-centered mind, the ego mind, wants to lock down on something as it wants to treat this, you could say, profound insight in such a way that it hangs on to it. That was a great yawn. was a good one. You tired? Yeah, me too. Is that a real yawn or a fake yawn? Just an ordinary yawn. So, Charlotte Joko Beck, the Zen teacher of the last century, who's passed away now. Great teacher, student. I think her teacher was Maizumi Roshi, another one of those Zen priests from Japan they got a lot of bad press. So anyway, her title of one of her books is I think is Nothing Special. And so it's a way of, so it's something you want to communicate if you have some understanding of this, what this whole material, this study of Buddhism and what the Buddha taught is about, based on your own understanding of it. Then you begin to run into aspects of your own thinking process that is ordinary. But if you try to look at it as ordinary, suddenly it becomes extremely bizarre. It's like look at your hand too long and suddenly you're not sure whose hand that is. Look in the mirror too long, and that tends to happen too, especially if it's somebody else's mirror. Yeah, I know that. It doesn't make any sense. Or does it? So I think what happens there is it's the idea that our assumptions are hidden presumptions about the nature of this whole display. We just take for granted that everything is separate. Everything has its own boundary, its own shape and size and color. And some things are really unique and special, and some things are just carpet beetles. Nothing special. You don't even want to think about them any longer than you absolutely have to. Whereas a peacock, are there ordinary peacocks?
Females.
The female is ordinary, kind of like cardinals. So the interesting thing about this teaching is there's not some way you can kind of make everything be ordinary. That teaching of Rigpa, or great perfection, that everything is just how it needs to be right now. That doesn't mean relatively you shouldn't change something or move something or modify something. But the understanding of it is that it's perfect. That your deep understanding of everything, as you move to paint something red, move something from one place to another because it's a better place for it to be, relatively speaking. Working in the relative world without any picking and choosing, that's the challenge of this kind of way of working with things. Very difficult to see things that are relatively not good, wrong, and still see that as the great perfection. And see that as ordinary. See that as profound and ordinary at the same time. It's not that they're the same thing. That might be going too far. Then we're trying to smush things together. I had a couple of other images from other teachers that talked about Rigpa, Tamageshepa, ordinary mind, not coming to the fore right now. Yes.
Can something be perfect but also need to change or need to be modified?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
How do you see something simultaneously as perfect and needing to be changed?
Practice the rest of your life. Train your mind so that your mind is so clear that it doesn't go elsewhere. If it goes elsewhere, you're dividing up the world into, voting blocks. Don't go anywhere. Everything you need to know is right here. It's very immediate and it's ordinary. And then when anything moves in that dynamic, you know exactly what to do. You no longer actually make choices about anything. You might not be able to do anything because there's nothing is moving in the way that would have to move in order for you to take action on something. The way when I talk about that, I usually say that's patience. Wait until you have to do something. This doesn't mean if you're watching a burning house, you're not sure because you're watching it from the inside, which door to run out of. You know, run. You'll find a door. So it's that kind of a thing that you may need to put yourself in gear before you know what you're going to do next. That's frightening to ego. The ego mind wants to have some kind of a guarantee signed by someone who knows stuff that things are not going to go wrong if I do thus and so. We all know, and we're that person. We know someone who is going back and forth between should I or shouldn't I? Should I do this or should I do that? And it's not that should be stopped or pushed down or disagreed with, but just watch that very closely. If you don't do if you don't add to the scale by thinking about, well, this is not so good because all the becauses are just add up to just that, a bunch of reasons, but about. But there's a hidden kind of area underneath there that we start adding on our thought patterns on top that we don't fundamentally see what that is. May take some time. As it says in this sutra, and I never can remember which one it is, picking and choosing is a disease of the mind. What? Shinsen-ming, is that it? Not that it'll trust the only attorney in the room. I think you're the only attorney. We had 2 attorneys in here yesterday. So, what?
We have 2 attorneys. We have a debate.
What? Oh, yeah, we have a debate. Yes.
Is seeing something as perfect and the original abrasiveness, are they 2 different qualities? So if you're looking at your anger and then you begin to see it as ordinary mind, is there a different quality to that?
There could be. But I hesitate to, not only hesitate, I won't prescribe or describe what is going to happen for you in your mental planetarium. The karma that the causes and conditions, let's use that word, that each person is dealing with are so completely unique and yet similar. We all have some self-centeredness, we all have some pride, we all have some a taste of hope and fear, hope for this, fear that. We're all functioning in that similar way, but the exact patterning for you in your life from the time you showed up in this body form is going to be very unique. So you could say, well, is that ordinary? Yes.
Isn't it also ordinary for the mind just to add?
Yeah. Yeah, you're born and then the causes and conditions that show up here. So you've noticed that some people, even when they're 10 years old, go find 15 10-year-olds or 11 and then interview them about anything. Pick a topic, interview them about anything. And they're all, even though they're only 11, they all have really unique, not only abilities, but capacity for thinking about anything you would ask them. And already that early in life, they're much different than different levels of intelligence, different levels of hope and fear, different levels of pride. Very unique.
Is there a way to work with ordinary mind when we're in a situation that's very seductive and mundane?
So the way I talk about this, and this is heard me say this before, is whatever is happening in any situation, whether there's a passion, aggression, ignorance, or some kind of intense feeling or or intense aversion, or some kind of wanting to bail, wanting to shut down, go somewhere else, do something else. Anytime that's happening, the path quality of that, well, the ground is the confusion or the difficulty, and then the path, working with that as an awareness practice, is to include the other sense fields. Because quite often, anytime there's any fear, anytime there's any hesitation, anytime there's any paranoia about anything, all that awareness is just, we suck up into the thinking process in order as a defense, and it practically, all the other senses get bleached out. It's like nothing is happening in the auditory sense or the olfactory sense. So it just, all that awareness goes into fretting about it. And you can actually, because it's in the present moment, because you're not trying to abandon what is happening, you're not trying to abandon the negativity, but you're with the negativity, you're going through whatever you're, or anyone is going through, and you include how this feels, how your clothes feel, the colors of things. A very simple, noticing of any what's the objects that are arising in the other sense fields, to put it simply. And something about doing that actually softens up it doesn't get rid of the paranoia, it doesn't try to shut it down, but you're including things that are in the present moment. How this feels is here. So there's an innate intelligence in all the other sense fields. They don't really think, they feel. They have if you look at if you just look at the color red, if something is completely red, a certain kind of emotional dynamic happens and if you look at something and you go to another color, it might be very subtle, but you can sense that change. Yes?
Talking about the other senses, saying they have an intimate intelligence and that they feel, are we able to see our thinking process in the same way?
Maybe, but it's if we try to go there and actually do that, then the doing part becomes just more thinking and elaboration and explaining, and then depending on your particular or my particular skill at thinking, being an attorney, is having someone who would be drawn to doing that kind of work, not to pick on Marla, but has a way of working with things that is very, very logical and practical and strategic, and just good at sorting out all the bits of apparent phenomena that are connected with any given situation, and even naming them, making little mini evaluations about each one, and then bringing them together, and then when they start to come apart, taking it back apart and re-inspecting everything again. Am I doing pretty good here, Marla?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Why would she disagree? We're not in court. We're in court, she might. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's so many, it gets very complicated as soon as we go in with some kind of agenda. On the other hand, to go in with an agenda of just wanting to see what is actually happening, that's not so bad. Then there's a sense of openness, a sense of receiving. It's like you hear a knock at the door, and rather than go in the other room and think about who might be there, you might use that kind of an example where that metaphor could apply to something you've been avoiding for years. It's just like you went in the other room and just not going to think about that. I'm just, there it goes knocking again, but I'm not answering that door.
Is there anything that's extraordinary?
So extraordinary is a word that we apply to something that has intense contrast with all the ordinariness. But you can't have ordinary without extraordinary. You can't have those two situations. So yes, but just from the point of view of how you perceive it or how you apprehend that could be extraordinary.
Is awakening extraordinary?
No, it's ordinary, but it's as Suzuki Roshi said, until it happens, it's extraordinary because it's going to be some great awakening thing. And then and it does happen to be pretty flashy because it's quite an escape hatch. Please keep interrogating me.
Could you say one of William Carlos Williams' poems?
Can I repeat one of them? Let's see. I can come close, but I can't. It's so precise. There's one that was a refrigerator note that's about plums.
This is just to say.
Huh?
This is just to say.
This is just to say. Do you know that one? This is just to say.
I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox, which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious. So sweet and so cold.
You got it. So it's a beautiful poem. Then he has them about chickens and rain on a red wheelbarrow, and
Oh, yeah.
there's just
So much depends.
so much depends. Yeah, that's the title of that one. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to say any more?
So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow besides the white chickens.
Yes.
And I forgot the part of the rain.
Yeah. The rain was on. Rain was on the wheelbarrow. Something like that, yeah. So yeah. Can you recite? Since we're doing this, can you recite Pablo Neruda's Yellow Heart? Amarillo.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that in Spanish?
Not. I just remember the mint.
Mint, the elephant's fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also. So the idea there is that something is brought together, and it's so ordinary, you know. It's ordinary. It's profound. It's just ordinary. But the questions would be good, so I can stop tearing up here. Yes.
Your title is It's Ordinary. What is the it's?
What?
I heard that when you went into the kitchen after we all sat down.
It's Inada's little unicorn. Where's your unicorn? You have it? Well, I think it's looking for you. I didn't take it. I'm gonna go get it. Huh? What? Oh, it's out there.
Is it?
Yeah. I just took his waste box. What a cutie. Well, why is that humorous? The only person that's not really smiling is Robert.
I have one of those in my car that I have 2 tears. So.
You do? He does, yeah. Sounds like a mouse to me. We have a lot of mice. Okay, okay, Inara, squeeze it. One of my teaching devices.
Every altar needs one.
Yeah, need something ordinary, like a squeaker. Further questions? Yes.
What is the it's of the it's ordinary?
This, any situation. The next time you, everybody is going to do, this is going to happen to everyone here, and I want to bring your attention to it, is the next time you get out of bed, you'll notice you have a left leg. Everyone here has a left leg, yeah. Just look at it. Just look at you're sitting on the edge of the bed, you're getting ready to get dressed, put on your robe or whatever, and look down, look at your left leg. It's ordinary. Yes, Michael.
Is it not the thought that's ordinary, but the action?
No, there's no, I don't know the parts of speech, I tell you what that is. But it's just this. It's like, this is what this little slogan on the, as it is. It's just trying to help you, encourage you and me to not to abandon anything, and not to grasp at anything, and not to reject or fight with anything, but it's just this, always. It's always just this. There isn't anything else but always. Past and future are illusions. That doesn't mean there isn't something happening that fools us. That's why we plan stuff. But as you've noticed, plans don't work, because there's no way you can plan for something that never gets here. What you plan for, it doesn't get here. Something else comes, and then you try to modify your plan to fit it. You notice that? Isn't that ordinary? Oh, okay. Yes.
You said it's
What was your name again?
Junshu.
Junshu. Okay, thank you.
You said it's so ordinary, it's profound.
Yes.
What is the concept of profound pointing at?
That it's beyond thought. It's beyond. It's a quality of beyond that is right in front of you. It's like to use the very fancy words temporal, and eternal. That if you look at what is in front of you, if you look at your ankle, you're looking at eternity. Doesn't mean your ankle or your foot aren't going to go back into the elements. They will in 20, 30, 50, 60, 100 years or whatever. But the seeing that, you're actually seeing beyond time and space, to use some more relative. It's very difficult to continue to use relative words and concepts and point to something that doesn't have an existence, in the sense that if it exists, then it's going to die. Anything that comes into existence passes out of existence. That's why they call it. That's why one of the teachings of the Buddha is the three marks of existence would be nothing lasts, everything is impermanent, everything is discontent or not happy, or is suffering, and the last one is everything is without any central situation going on. Everything is without a self. There isn't anything. There isn't anyone. And it's ordinary. Yes.
What causes us to miss the profundity of our left ankle?
Because there's a big difference between seeing that something's ordinary and thinking that it's ordinary. And we think things are ordinary. But to see that, I'm not just talking about the eye. That's part of it. That's a sense you're using to do that. But to do that, you actually hear it, smell it, taste it. You not just your ankle, but just the apprehension of that moment of looking there, that complete rigpa, tamogishepa. That is tamogishepa. I'm just using that as something that showed up. It could also happen looking in the mirror the first time you look in the mirror. I started thinking that dream I had last night. I'm not going to tell anybody that dream. No way. Yes.
What gets in the way of seeing that?
What is in the way? Fear. We get sealed off in something called me, and we continue to fuel that with this and that, and like it and I don't like it, and the three poisons: passion, aggression, ignorance. And we seal that off. Trungpa Rinpoche, his metaphor for that in his Shambhala teachings was a cocoon. We build some kind of a structure around us of our ideas, our opinions, our hopes, our fears, our judgments, our evaluations based on ourselves, based on our society, what's right, what's wrong, who should, who shouldn't, and we seal ourselves off from that so that we're not fearful. Instead of the spiritual path is actually what you're doing is you're going right through that cocoon. You're not going to war with it, but you're going through with it. Your awareness practice is starting to that cocoon starts to become very porous, and not only can you see out, but everything else can see in. So you might feel very vulnerable, and that's why it seems to be necessary to have a spiritual path. It's not something to believe in, but some way, some form of using whatever we have here, our bodies, and in this situation we have a temple, we have a monastery where that's all this room here is for, is to train your mind to see more clearly. It's not about believing in Buddhism. Believing in Buddhism is extra. You don't need to believe in anything. But you can make use of this structure to further stretch and train your mind so that you can see more clearly, so that you can, at some point, there could be a time when you don't need to ask anybody about what Rigpa is or what ordinary mind is. You see it yourself all the time. You see it all the time. Should I say that again? Yes.
Question from Shane down in Texas. 2 parts. Does pushing, pulling, ignoring prevent realization? If so, how?
It doesn't do anything. What gets in the way of realization is our attachment and our lack of awareness about that. You can just watch pushing and pulling and shutting down. You can watch the 3 poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. And just by observing those, just by seeing when you're grasping, when you're pushing, and when you're shutting down or closing off, just by doing that, eventually the self-centeredness starts to lose its fuel to continue to re-establish that cocoon, just by witnessing it. So that's when the idea of no elaborations, whatever occurs, no explanation, no justification, no elaboration. David.
What's happening when someone tells us something and we go, exactly?
Ignorance. It's just the same as we say something and then rather than just let it float in the middle of nowhere, we say, know what I'm saying? We have a phrase filler we put in there. Exactly as a phrase filler coming from the other side. I mean, it's an agreement. You could say that there's something else going on that looks more like, it looks like not seeing something. What do you think? How does it look to you?
Another question about it is there an exactness in the beginning?
Like when you say eggs? Or before you say actually?
Yes.
Yeah. It's really easy for me to get into a whole lot of really terrible humor there. I'm not going to do it. Kevin wants me to do that. Yeah. No. So could you paraphrase your question? Because I think it's a good question.
With ordinary, sometimes it seems like there's some kind of initial exactness about it. What is that exactness?
I don't know. I follow you a little bit, but not enough to help you. Look at it some more.
And then
where are you going right now? You just left me.
Connection.
Are we in the same room?
I don't know.
That's progress. Go ahead and finish your question.
when I want to say exactly to somebody that has just told me something heartfelt or profound,
Okay.
it's like I'm trying to accept them, but what does it exactly do to that situation?
Yeah, it fills it with some kind of it strengthens the relative situation. It isn't necessarily communication. It's more like, you know, that's how friends always appreciate and like each other, no matter, you can't do anything wrong. If it's your friend, they love you no matter how big of an ass you are. Thank you. It's lunchtime? You said it's lunchtime? What?
It's time to dismiss for the daily Armageddon.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So we'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes we have in the hallway. As always, we do continue to depend on and need your financial support. Please help us as much as you can.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san chi shi hu, shi son bu sa mo ko sa, wo ko ja ho ro bi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.